You know, usually when we look at a lighthouse, we tend to think of it as this, like, incredibly defiant thing.
Right, just a rigid stone structure fighting the ocean.
Exactly. Trying to control the sea or conquer the elements. I mean, we picture it as this ultimate monument to human dominance over nature.
It's a super common image, yeah. We treat it almost like a fortress that's actively battling the waves.
But, and this is what's so fascinating, when you actually read into the mechanics of maritime navigation, that assumption is just completely wrong.
Oh, clearly.
A lighthouse doesn't control the water. It doesn't calm the storm.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't even change the shape of the jagged rocks it sits on.
No, not at all.
Its only job, really, its sole purpose for existing is to make the coast readable. It's just there to eliminate the error in how the land is perceived.
That's beautifully put. And, today we're looking at this amazing stack of philosophical, architectural, and personal notes that take that exact premise and apply it directly to the human body.
Yeah, and if you are someone who loves to learn, if you love connecting the dots between massive systems and the intimate reality of daily life, you are going to find an absolute goldmine in these pages.
Definitely. There's this fascinating collision of ideas in these sources. On one side, we have this macro system project mentioned in the text called LUX 143.
Right, the LUX 143 project.
Yeah, which deals with digital heritage, guiding artificial intelligence, and the massive systemic legacy of lighthouses. But colliding with that is this incredibly intimate, personal struggle for what the author calls embodied legibility.
Embodied legibility. I love that term.
It's powerful, right? It's the profound conflict between knowing exactly who you are on the inside and constantly, just exhaustingly, being misread by the world on the outside.
So our mission on this deep dive is to explore this one central profound idea that sits right at the intersection of design, navigation, and human existence, which is this quote, "Orientation becomes visible when form stops being misread."
And to really grasp how this applies to you, the listener, or to any human being, we first kind of have to ground ourselves in that macro system of the ocean.
Right, we have to start with the ships before we get to the people.
Exactly. The sources make a very deliberate point about how we navigate the physical world, specifically through the lens of that LUX 143 concept. Because lighthouses do not alter the substance of the land. What they actually deal with is navigation ambiguity.
Okay, let's unpack this. Navigation ambiguity.
So imagine a ship out on the water. That ship might have the absolute correct course plotted.
Right.
It might have a perfectly functioning compass, an incredibly experienced captain, a fully integrated understanding of its destination. Everything is right internally.
But the environment is the issue.
Exactly. If the signal coming from the land is weak or obscured, other ships, and even the captain themselves, might misread the maneuvers.
Because of the fog.
Because of the fog. And notice how the text treats the fog. The fog isn't hostile. It isn't evil or malicious, even though it really feels that way when you're lost in it. It is simply a medium where form is distorted.
It's just weather.
Right. It creates this thick layer of noise that obscures the signal, creating a condition where the truth of the coastline just cannot be accurately read.
I'm trying to visualize this in, like, a more everyday context for us. Is it kind of like trying to tune an old analog radio?
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Like, the station is there, the music is playing perfectly in the studio, the broadcast is entirely real.
Right, the substance exists.
Yeah, but if you can't cut through the static, the person listening on the other end only hears noise. They might think it's just dead air or completely different song altogether. So the lighthouse in this scenario is just cutting the static.
That captures the dynamic perfectly.
Yeah.
And what that means for the paradigm of being seen is profound.
How so?
Well, this isn't about changing the substance of the land to make it safer, or, in your analogy, changing the music playing in the studio just to please the listener.
Whoa, I see.
It's entirely about eliminating the reading error. The text points out that orientation is utterly useless if it is trapped in noise.
Wow.
Yeah, a captain can know their exact coordinates, but if their signal is trapped in distortion, a collision is still going to happen.
But navigation ambiguity isn't just a maritime problem, is it? I mean, if we apply the same logic to a person standing in a crowded room or, walking into a new job, what happens when a human being is constantly misread?
This is where the sources get deeply analytical about the human experience.
Yeah.
They break our personal transformation down into 3 distinct speeds.
3 speeds.
First, you have your internal identity. This actually changes quite quickly.
Really? Fast.
Relatively speaking, yeah. You can read a book, have an epiphany, understand who you are, accept your history, and integrate your narrative relatively fast. The internal compass sets itself.
Map is drawn.
Exactly. Then you have the physical body, which changes much more slowly. Biology, habits of movement, vocal resonance, physical form. These things take time to catch up to the mind.
Right, you can't just change your posture or your voice overnight.
Exactly. But the third speed, the absolute slowest of all, is social reading by others.
Because other people are reading us through the fog of their own biases.
Yes. Social reading relies on cultural templates, expectations, historical stereotypes, and just massive perceptual inertia. And because these three systems, the mind, the body, and society, are operating at entirely different speeds, it creates what the text calls the legibility gap.
The legibility gap, meaning like, you know your course internally, your compass is perfectly aligned, but the world's radar is constantly picking up the wrong shape.
And living in that gap creates a very specific kind of exhaustion. The sources describe it as the exhaustion of chronic self-explanation.
Oh, man. I think everyone has felt a version of that.
Right. It's living in a constant state of having to translate your tone, your intent, and your identity because your physical form is not instantly readable to the people around you.
It's like you're constantly apologizing for the static on the radio.
Exactly. Because we have to understand that the human brain acts as a probabilistic navigation system. We do not look at a person and see their underlying essence or their soul.
Right, we aren't mind readers, we're just pattern matchers.
It goes even deeper than that. The brain doesn't just casually pattern match. It takes a combination of signals and runs a threat and category assessment in milliseconds. It's a basic survival mechanism.
So what are we scanning for?
We look at a silhouette, we look at a person's gait, which, by the way, the brain is so incredibly attuned to that we can identify a person's identity just by the rhythm of their walk in the pitch dark.
Wait, really? Just from the walk?
Yeah, it's incredible. We listen to the melody and cadence of their voice. We catch micro gestures. We sense a sheer confidence of their presence in a physical space.
That's a lot of data.
It is. The brain takes all these scattered data points, runs a statistical probability, and spits out a category before you even say hello.
But wait, I have to push back on this a little bit.
What?
Because if we accept this premise, doesn't adjusting our architecture for others kind of border on conformity? Like, how is changing my silhouette or my movement so people understand me any different from just changing who I am to fit in? If my internal compass is set and I know my truth, why should I care if their radar is broken? Why do we need society's validation if we possess our own truth?
It's a really crucial distinction to make, and it's great you brought it up because the sources actually anticipate this exact resistance.
Oh, they do?
Yes. If we look closely, we find that this isn't about craving external validation or applause or blending into the herd. The text outlines a concept called ontological peace.
Ontological peace.
Yeah. For human beings, peace isn't just knowing yourself in a vacuum, unless you plan to live alone on a mountain, right?
Fair point.
Peace is the right to be obvious to the world without constantly translating yourself. When your internal truth and your external form don't match in the eyes of others, it creates a deep systemic pain that the text calls aesthetic dissonance.
Aesthetic dissonance.
Think of it like watching a movie where the audio track is out of sync with the video by just like half a second.
Oh, that's the most frustrating feeling in the world.
Right. You can still follow the plot. You know what the characters are saying. But the mismatch creates this low-level, persistent headache.
Yeah, it's exhausting to watch.
That's what it feels like, to be misread every day of your life. You are asking the world to validate you or to like you. You are asking the world to simply read the correct coordinates.
Ah, I see.
When you are constantly misread, it's a chronic disruption of your existence in a shared reality. You are a ship broadcasting one course, but everyone around you is bracing for a different maneuver.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So if we are broadcasting a signal that's out of sync, how do we adjust the signal without compromising the truth of who we are?
We use form and structure. Specifically, the sources point to clothing, but not as decoration and not as a costume. We use clothing as architecture.
As architecture. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Fashion is rarely treated with the intellectual gravity of architecture, but the author insists it absolutely should be. Yeah. A garment, a dress, a suit. It isn't just an aesthetic whim, and it certainly isn't a mask to hide behind. It is a categorical signal. It is a visible, negotiated consent between your internal self and the external world.
I'm trying to map this onto how buildings work. So picking a silhouette isn't putting on a disguise. It's more like an architect deciding whether to use glass or steel or brick to make a building make sense in its environment.
Exactly.
Like, if you build a sleek, hyper-modern glass structure in the middle of a historic 18th century cobblestone district, it sends a jarring, dissonant signal. People don't know how to interact with it.
Yes.
But if you build it with brick and stone, it harmonizes.
Yep.
We are literally building a physical structure on our bodies so the probabilistic brains of the people around us can navigate us correctly.
It is pure structural design. And the text provides this incredibly detailed breakdown of 4 specific architectural silhouettes of dresses, exploring how geometry changes perception.
Let's get into those.
What's vital here is that this geometry alters how you are read without needing theatricality, heavy makeup, or visual illusions. It's just shapes.
So if a dress is architecture, how do different building materials or shapes change the way people read us? For instance, what kind of signal does a strict triangular shape send compared to something softer?
Let's look at the A-line silhouette, which the text explicitly refers to as the lighthouse on a rock.
The lighthouse on a rock, I like that.
Think about the literal geometry of that shape. It is narrow at the shoulders, gently expanding downward to the floor to create a stable, harmonious triangle.
Right.
From a perceptual standpoint, this shape hides the hips, creates a defined waist, and offers a smooth, uninterrupted flow of movement. It feels profoundly grounded. When the brain registers that shape, it reads stability, tradition, and a natural foundation.
Okay, but what if you need movement instead of just a solid foundation? What if the rigid symmetry of a triangle doesn't match the internal orientation you're trying to broadcast?
Then you move to a different architectural principle, like the wrap dress. The text categorizes this as a cross structure.
Cross structure means?
Instead of rigid, forward-facing symmetry, you introduce diagonal lines crossing the body. In physical architecture, diagonal beams break up rigid, brutalist blocks and create a sense of dynamic tension and movement.
Oh, like a suspension bridge almost.
Yes, exactly. On the human body, a wrap dress softens the shoulders and creates a fluid, moving form that feels deeply organic and approachable. The brain reads it as kinetic energy rather than static stone.
That makes total sense. It's shifting from a monument to something that lives and breathes. But what about lifting the structure off the ground entirely, like opening up the space underneath?
That brings us to the empire waist, which is compared to an arch.
An arch.
In this geometry, the waistline is lifted high, sitting just beneath the bust, and the fabric falls completely freely to the floor. Think of a beautiful, ancient stone archway, where the space underneath is open, clear, and unburdened.
Wow, yeah.
On the body, it creates lightness. It creates a calm, unbothered space underneath the structure, completely shifting the perceived proportions of the body into something elegant, historical, and serene. The brain reads it as elevation.
It's so fascinating how much our brains are just subconsciously processing these geometries.
Oh, constantly.
And what if you just want to strip all of that historical reference and structural complexity away if you want the most direct signal possible?
Then you utilize the minimalist silhouette. The text likens this to the modernist building. Clean, straight lines. No excess fabric, no structural crutches, no decorative distraction.
Very stark.
Extremely. It requires pure form and absolute confidence to wear, much like a modernist glass and steel building requires absolute precision in its design.
Because there's nowhere to hide.
Exactly. There is nowhere to hide poor craftsmanship in a glass building. It projects quiet, uncompromising confidence. The brain reads it as transparency and authority.
I really appreciate how the sources emphasize that the goal here isn't to create an optical illusion. You aren't tricking the eye into seeing something that isn't there.
No, not at all.
You are finding a geometry of fabric that naturally aligns with the body's actual movement. It's about finding the physical form where your own brain stops arguing with the reflection in the mirror.
You aren't changing who you are. You are finding a form that naturally carries your internal orientation. You are literally building the lighthouse that accurately reveals the shape of your true coast.
That is such a powerful image.
And it's profound because it shifts the burden of existence. You are no longer trying to force the entire world to understand your complex, nuanced internal narrative. You are simply providing a clear geometric signal that their probabilistic brains can instantly, effortlessly read without exhausting you.
Okay, so we've adjusted the architecture, we understand the fog of social perception, and we are sending the right signals through our geometry and our movement. So what does this all mean? What does the destination actually look like? When does the aesthetic dissonance the pain of being misread finally end?
This is where the concept of quiet recognition comes into play, and it might be the most counterintuitive part of this entire exploration.
How so?
Well, we are culturally conditioned by stories to expect a grand climax, a parade, a sudden realization of absolute perfection.
Right, like a movie moment where the clouds part, the music swells, and the world suddenly applauds you for exactly who you are.
Yes, but the sources state very clearly that it almost never happens that way in reality.
Right.
Quiet recognition isn't a singular dramatic event. It is a statistical shift.
A statistical shift, meaning it happens quietly in the math of everyday life.
Exactly. Remember that the brain keeps a subconscious running tally of how often you are misread by the environment. It's a fundamental survival mechanism. It notes when a space feels hostile, dissonant, or unpredictable.
Because that means danger.
Right. But when you start adjusting your architecture, your form, your silhouette, your physical presence, the correct readings from other people begin to tick up. From being read correctly 30% of the time to 50% to 70%.
Oh, wow.
And at a certain invisible threshold, the brain updates its fundamental model of reality.
It realizes, oh, I am safe here. The people in this room know what they're looking at.
And that realization doesn't feel like a triumphant, "I've finally proved to the world who I am." It feels like a massive exhale.
That's a relief.
Yes, it feels like I no longer have to prove it. The argument ends. The constant state of vigilance, the chronic need for self-explanation, it just softly fades out of your daily routine.
And the text points out that when this threshold is crossed, the brain stops living in what they call check mode.
Right, check mode.
Okay. Think about walking into a party or a boardroom and constantly scanning the room to see who is misjudging you, who is confused by you, who you need to explain yourself to. When you no longer have to spend 80% of your mental processing power just trying to assert your basic existence, massive amounts of energy are suddenly freed up.
Energy for actual life, for deep creativity, for genuine relationships.
Exactly.
It is the ultimate return on investment for finding your embodied legibility. You get your life force back. You are no longer fueling the lighthouse with your own exhaustion.
But if you're sitting there right now listening to this, trying to align your own identity, your career, or how you present yourself to your community, how do you know when you've reached this point?
This raises an important question, yeah. Do you have to wait until you hit 100%? Until every single person perfectly comprehends your internal truth?
To answer that, we go right back to the sea. A ship's captain doesn't wait for a perfectly clear sky to sail.
They don't need a guarantee that every single cloud of fog has vanished from the ocean. They just need a signal from the lighthouse that is reliable enough to steer by.
Right.
You achieve quiet recognition, not when every single person on Earth perceives you with flawless, total accuracy. You achieve it when your form is stable enough that you stop feeling like your existence is a random, misunderstood accident.
When the signal is strong enough that you can finally just navigate the waters and get on with the journey.
When the internal orientation and the external form align just enough that the static fades into the background and the music from the station finally comes through clearly.
The sea taught humans to navigate storms, but life teaches humans to become readable. We learned today that true orientation isn't just knowing where you are on the inside. It's allowing that truth to become a legible, readable form in the world. It's building the architecture that lets you be seen without having to shout through the fog.
We all have an internal orientation, and we all wear architectures, whether it's the clothes we put on our bodies, the words we choose in an email, or the habits we project in a meeting. I want you to look at the architecture you are presenting to the world today. Is it acting as a lighthouse, making your true coast readable? Or is it just adding more noise to the fog?
That is a brilliant question to leave you with, and a lot to think about the next time you decide how to present yourself to the world. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, keep navigating, and we'll see you next time.